is also
Yes.
here.
Okay, okay. Let it. So he wanted to listen to my class. So
Sir, I
okay,
request you to please begin.
sure, sure.
Is there
So
any
how many
presentation?
persons students are there today?
Around 79 are there.
Around 80. Okay,
79
okay,
students.
good. I'm a machine to start down for them. Okay, so good morning. So you can go ahead. So that you do not have to be present, but if you want, you are always welcome. You are always welcome, but you don't have to compromise with your own schedule.
No, no, sir, it's all right.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Good morning to all of you. First of all, sincere apologies for this delay, which is beyond my control. And okay, let's go ahead. It's a part and parcel of our life. So before we proceed, uh, uh, let's spend a couple of minutes on recapitulation. So first of all, what we have basically tried to emphasize upon during the last two classes. Number one, every person should have some exposure and knowledge to the study of algorithms. Why? Because it helps you to appreciate, to understand and analyze any problem rationally, logically, and analytically, rationally, logically, and analytically with an open mindset. Clear? And this is so important because in every stage of our life, family life, social life, academic, or whatever we are there, we are always solving problems. We have to solve problems. Number two, we have also formally introduced the term algorithm, which is nothing but a set of well-defined, unambiguous statements to solve a particular problem. This set of statements must satisfy the following criteria: 0 or more inputs, 1 or more outputs, every state must be finite, every statement must be finite, executable in finite time, then every statement must be definite. There cannot be any ambiguity there. And every statement must be effective in solving the problem for which the algorithm has been made. Today, we will try to, in fact, deliberate upon a few very common algorithms which are generally covered in almost first 2-3 lectures of study of algorithms in computer science. So before that, let us again build up the perspective. I'll take about 3-4 minutes on that. What is that? Are you fully aware of the difference between the terms science, engineering, and technology? I'm sure many of us have very great confusion in doing that. Don't forget, a subject like computer science and engineering generally does not exist in the Western world and most part of the world. Either they have computer science or they have computer engineering. Computer science, computer engineering comes under EECS, electrical engineering and computer science program. Computer science is science. Computer engineering is engineering. So what is the difference? Science helps you to observe a phenomena. We have already explained that earlier. Observe a phenomena, again, rationally, logically, analytically. I had given you the example of that, probably, example of that lens, where we observe that how a set of rays converge to a particular point. This is an observation, science. When we take it further, to try to analyze, change the lens composition, distance, and all those, so that we can make a conglomerate of lenses to get more energy, we get, this is engineering. And then when we take it even further to that engineered product, do some engineering more so that it becomes suitable for applicability in the common market, that is technology. Now, when we teach a subject, the way we teach it, the way you learn it, is very much dependent on the broader perspective. Subject like, say, thermodynamics. It is taught in mechanical, chemical, physics, chemistry. But you can very well appreciate, that this, the way you teach is very much dependent on in which discipline you are teaching it, in which discipline you are studying it. As an example, say, many of you must be familiar with linear equation solving, simultaneous solving simultaneous linear equations, or optimization problems using simplex method and all those. If you teach that subject in maths class, you know, you teach the rigor of maths. If you teach that or you study the same subject in computer science, you analyze the complexity, you analyze, all these perturbations and all those, but you don't teach the rigor of mathematics behind it. And in the same subject, when you teach it in management courses, there, when you teach that in the management program, there you do what? There you take the computer science subject as input and try to apply that for management studies. So now, incidentally, algorithm so far in our mindset is considered somewhat like a patented subject of computer science. And there lies the problem. Today, I'll try to deliberate upon a few very common examples of algorithm study in computer science. But at the same time, I would also try to explain how it should be studied by any individual as a problem-solving technique, and what is the lesson we derive, out of that. Okay, let us take the first example, very common for computer science students. and must be IT student and many other students as well. Anybody who has learned a little bit of programming, they must also be given this problem. Having given an integer, how do you decide whether the integer is prime or not? I'm not using the board. It's very clumsy, so I'm not using it, but and you know it very well. So having given a positive integer, before that, I would like you to recollect another very important aspect which I covered in the last 2 lectures. What is that? Don't forget, a machine or a computer cannot do what a human being cannot do. Computer does it much faster, repeatedly, without any error. That is the advantage of using a computer. But again, it cannot do anything which a computer cannot do. And a computer, will be using the word computer and machine interchangeably. I told in the last class that a computer cannot think. A computer cannot judge. Now, in today's era is of artificial intelligence and machine intelligence. We are definitely very fast entering into an area where our entire life would be governed by AI and ML. But a machine is not intelligent. It has to be trained to become intelligent. Since it cannot think, it cannot judge, our mindset to solve a problem has to be adapted accordingly, and we have to train the machine accordingly. Okay. Now coming back to our problem. So what is a prime integer? Which is divisible by 1 and by itself and by no other integer in between. Very simple. So having given an integer n, how do I decide whether it is divisible by, whether it is a prime or not? As a naive person, I would try to divide the integer by 2, 3, 4, 5 and go up to n minus 1. And I get the answer. Am I correct? Yes, very much. But is it the way to do it? Definitely not. Why? Because we have to think that all these divisions are they necessary? Can we do it at a much faster pace? Then we have to think. First step is, we know very well that if it is an even integer, if this is an even integer, it cannot be a prime. All these have been told in your, for those who have studied programming, have been told in your class. So first check whether it is even or not. Fine. If it is even, you don't have to proceed further. It is not any prime number. Next step, even then, how many divisions are necessary? Some students immediately say, no, we don't have to go beyond half. Is it necessary to go up to half? Even that is also not true. You just think a bit and you know that even if we go on dividing up to square root of n, that is fair enough. Just see, if the given integer is 97, we started with division up to 96. And now we know that we don't have to make so many divisions. We don't have to have so many divisions. Just square root of 96. And it would be somewhere in between 9 and 10. How much reduction we get? And we leave out the even numbers also. And then also we have to think square root of 97, for an example, would be 9 point something. So do I take the floor function or the ceiling function? Division cannot be by 9.34, something like that. Either we have to take 9 or we have to take 10. Again, you think in this case, floor function should be enough. Think yourself. And then go further. If an integer is divisible by 9, obviously it would be divisible by 3 also. So if an integer is divisible by some other integer, it will also be divisible by all the factors of that integer. So that will reduce the number of divisions even further. So what is the moral of this story? Now comes the perspective of this series of lectures on algorithms. First of all, having given a problem, don't try to solve it immediately. I always keep on telling my students again and again, whenever you meet the interview board, whenever you are asked a question, don't try to answer immediately. Listen to the question very carefully. Think again and again, and then answer. Number one. Number two, whenever you come up with a solution, whenever you come up with a solution, think again and again, can you do it in a better way? Can you do it in a better way? Can you think it in some more innovative way? For those, what I'm saying, we are always facing problems. We always have problems, and we have to solve that. Just see the innovation required in solving a problem. For those who follow T20 cricket matches, just see the way innovation is applied in batting, bowling, fielding, everywhere. Even in soccer, even in music, everywhere, innovation. So the study of algorithms creates a mindset to develop the background of thinking innovatively. Okay. Next, take another example. Again, very common example. Having given a list of n integers, you are supposed to check whether a particular integer is available in that list or not. Having given a list of n integers, you are supposed to check whether it is available in the, it is there in the list. How do you do it? Check one at a time. First one, second one, third one, fourth one. In the maximum cases, in the worst case, how many comparisons you have to make? N. How many comparisons you have to make? N. Which is known as linear search. This technique is known as linear search. Now, if the same list is already sorted in the non-decreasing order, or say in the increasing order, can we apply some smarter method for searching? Again, you must have been taught that. Say we have 32 elements. How do you do it? Divide it by 2 and then keep on dividing by 2. Again, 32 comes to 2 blocks of 16. We see in which block it can be there. And then divide that block by again by 2, 8 and 8, and go like this. So in that case, how many times we have to search? Log n to the base 2. For 32, for 60, say for 16, we have to make log n to the base 2. That means 4 times we have to search. I told you that if I have to train a machine to do this, we have to go absolutely up to the micro level. That means we have to go up to the micro level. That means if log n to the base 2 is not an integer, if the number is not 32 or 16 or 64, it will be some real number. Say 5 plus 3, 4. Do I take the floor function or the ceiling function? You have to ascertain that. And you have to be very careful. In this case, it has to be the ceiling. Or can you do it the floor? Think again. But for this, of course, we have been taught in any class, probably from class 7. But what do we get if I dive further into the problem? What do we get if we dive further into the problem? In the linear search case, it is n. This is known as binary search. This is log n, from n to log n. So if the number is 32, in the first case, we need maximum n searches. In the second case, we need maximum 5 searches. Just see, the number of searches have gone down drastically. But you have to pay for it. What is that? That has to be the initial string of integers must be in ascending order so that we can apply binary search. Otherwise, we cannot. Again, whenever you face a problem, just see how it is done. That is covered in the class. But at the same time, try to understand the moral of a story. Whenever we read any, let's say, Bible story or some epic story, what is the moral behind it? In this case, it is like that. Now, let us go further. So now we know that for searching, we do it much faster if the string is already, or not string, the set of integers are already sorted. Now let's get down to an algorithm. Let's get down to an algorithm where for sorting algorithm. In fact, there are so many sorting algorithms. You must have studied some of them already. Let us take one. For those who have not studied this, I would strongly suggest read any textbook, and it will be very simple for you to understand these algorithms. The algorithms I have just referred to. Like prime number, binary search, linear search. Now let's get down to a simple sorting technique. Having given a list of integers, how do you sort it? One common way is, which is known as bubble sort. How? Compare the first 2 integers. If the first one is greater than the second one, swap it. Then compare second with third again. If the second one is less than the first one, swap it So keep on swapping the number, swapping the integer after every comparison, if the left one is more than the right one. So what would be the result? At the end of complete swapping, the largest number would be at the end of the, will be at the end. Swap, compare first and second. If first is higher than the second one, swap it. The second one becomes first and first one becomes second. Then again, second and third. Again, if it is larger, swap it again. So if you keep on swapping like this, whenever swapping is required, do the swapping. And at the end, the largest number goes to the end. Largest number goes to the end. So how many comparisons are required? At the maximum case, n. Now, if you have to sort it, this you have to repeat for each of the n integers in the list. You can call it n minus 1, n minus 2, and n minus 3 like that. But in a very naive manner, in a simplistic manner, we can say that it will take, we have to repeat the step n times. So simplistically, how many exchanges would be required? Comparisons and exchanges, n squared. So for linear search, we have to take n. For binary search, we need log n to the base 2. And this is known as bubble sort. This is known as n square. It will take n square amount of computations. Just give me a second. I'll just come. One moment. Okay. There are many ways of solving the problem of sorting. Take another simple way. For those who play cards, when the card is distributed and you arrange the cards in the manner I'll tell you now. How is it? You have a list of n integers. Take the first one, then take the second one, third one, and every time you make sure that the way you are developing the string or the integers, they are in the ascending order. So that, says now at any stage, say you have 5 integers. You take the 6th one. You put the 6th one in somewhere in between 1 and 5, so that the final list of 6 items will be sorted. That means, say you have already taken n integers, take the 11th one. So first you have to find a place within that 10 integers to identify where the 11th one has to be put. How do you do it? Use linear search, use binary search, because it is already sorted. You know where the 11th one has to be placed, and then do it. Again, very naively, very simplistically, this we have to done. How many times? There are n integers. You have to take one at a time. So you have to do it n times. And every time you have to do a linear search. And every time you have to do a linear search. And that will take log n times. So log n to the base 2 into n. That means n log n. Very simplistically, I am not getting into further details. So the same sorting in our previous algorithm using bubble sort, we used to take n square in the worst case. Whereas in this case, we can do it in n log n times. And n square is n into n, and n log n is n into log n. Log n is much, much lower than n. So n log n would be much lower than n square. But there's a catch in it. If the list is already sorted mostly, then in in bubble sort, we don't have to exchange it many times. So in bubble sort, what is the best case scenario? When the string is already sorted. And then what would be the time taken? We simply n. So having given a problem, this is now again I'm explaining the moral of the story. Having given a problem, first think it very carefully, and then considering that particular instance of the problem, try to work out the appropriate algorithm. Here is I'm using the word algorithm deliberately. You can call it technology, methodology, whatever. Try to work out the appropriate algorithm which will help you in solving the problem, in an optimal way. Let us take another problem. Again, very common problem in almost preliminary classes of computer science. Fibonacci sequence. So what is a Fibonacci sequence? If you have a series of integers such that every integer is equal to the sum total of previous two integers, such that every integer is equal to sum total of previous two integers, then this sequence is known as Fibonacci sequence. Then this is known as Fibonacci. As for example, 1, 2, 3, 1 plus 2 is 3, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. This is a Fibonacci sequence. Now, if the problem is generate a Fibonacci sequence of 100 integers, very simple. You know the logic. You can do it. And once you can do it, the computer can also do it. But if the problem is reverse, having given an integer, can we know whether that integer falls within a Fibonacci sequence? Just see. The problem is very complex. Having given an integer, first problem was generate first 100 Fibonacci numbers. Simple. Next problem is having given a number and the first two numbers of the Fibonacci sequence, can you say conclusively whether this is within that sequence or not? This is very complex problem. Of course, we can do it in a very naive way. We keep on generating the Fibonacci sequence from number 1 and then go ahead till we cross that integer and then have a solution. But obviously that is not the smart way. That leads to, again, another moral for solving a problem. What is that? Having given a problem, you can generally do it in many ways. If you consider all the possible ways then that approach to solve a problem is known as exhaustive enumeration. Exhaustive enumeration. In mathematical terms, the solution space of any problem generally have many elements, and each of them represents one way to solve the problem, one instance to solve a problem. This is exhaustive enumeration. But in most of, and that is very unsmart way of solving a problem. Why should I consider, say you are playing chessboard. When you are playing chess, when your opponent gives one move, technically you can give almost infinitely many moves. But do you consider all those moves? No. You narrow down the alternatives to a very small subset, and then you think on those small subsets to identify which one should be applicable in this case to give you the optimal solution. So we have to understand the differences, subtle differences between a solution, a feasible solution, and optimal solution, and a satisfiable solution. Okay? Suppose I'll get down to this problem once again, but for the sake of completeness at this point of time, for those who are familiar with the geography of Calcutta, suppose from Karunamoyi Salt Lake, you want to go to airport. Okay? You come to the bus stand, get a bus which takes you to Sialda. Is it a feasible solution to go to Sialda for going to airport from Karunamoyi? Of course, from Sialda you can take another bus. So this is a feasible solution. That means there is a feasibility to solve the problem in this approach. There is a feasibility to solve this problem within this approach. But is it an optimal solution? Do we consider this? Generally not. Generally not. Then again, optimality depends on many parameters. Optimality with respect to what? Time? Or with respect to distance? Or with respect to fare? And don't forget what we are saying again and again. Now you are taking this decision on your own. Tomorrow, thanks to AI and ML, maybe, in fact, nowadays also, you look at the mobile and all those, we have to leave this decision-making process to our computer. But the computer cannot make its own decision. You have to impart that intelligence to the computer to take the decision on your behalf. So unless you do not know very clearly what you want, how can you train the machine to get the job done on your behalf? Take the previous example. Going from Karunamoyi to airport, can I take a bus to Siala, maybe not. But if I have some information that the VIP road is blocked between Ultadanga and airport, then probably that is the better solution. There could be some road blockage, some problems or something like that. It's very common in a soccer field. You are supposed to score against your opponent. Very commonly, you give a back pass, that is big backwards. But ultimately, that leads to optimality. So we have to understand the set of all feasible solutions. That means an approach which is feasible subject to those 5 criterions of an algorithm: finiteness, definiteness, effectiveness, input and output. Then of course it can be taken. But in most of the cases, we may not be taking it because that does not satisfy optimality. And again, optimality is based on a criteria. In this case, by time, by distance, by fare. Depending on that, optimality will vary. Then optimality will vary depending on other circumstances also. Like it could be raining somewhere. There could be some disturbances somewhere. So the decision taking today, now, may not be the same decision if I take it after 1 hour. Such kind of systems are known as real-time system. I have introduced the term system earlier. What is that? Input, output, processing unit, and feedback. That is what is known as a system. Now, so you have to think this in entire perspective. So I get back to my initial hypothesis. Algorithm has to be studied except for those who are absolutely intent to carry on theoretical computer science. They have an entirely different ballgame altogether. For them, this is hardcore mathematics. This is hardcore mathematics. But for everyone, study of algorithms is a must. Study of algorithms is a must. And I am trying to impress upon you how to study the same algorithms from a problem-solving perspective. From a problem-solving perspective, just like if you study mechanical engineering, of course you have to be very familiar with differential equation solutions, solving differential equations. But do you study with the same mindset as a mathematics student? Of course not. There you are more interested in modeling the problem, and then the standard techniques can be used. A computer science student with absolute interest on carrying on with theoretical computer science, he or she has to go ahead with algorithms, design analysis of algorithms, and for them, it is more of a mathematics subject than a computer engineering subject. But for anybody who is interested in solving problems, irrespective of his field of study, even field of life, family, social, it has to be considered as a problem-solving tool. I give you another example. That there are many examples where we have a long way to go in higher education to catch up with the first changing necessities in uh, the uh, the developed world. One example, say you study biology. You study biology. In our days, we were told that if you love maths, study science or technology. If you don't love maths, go to biology. Today, biology and maths happens to be one of the most sought after combinations. And what has happened? Think again in medical treatment. What is orthopedics? It's strength of materials, which is covered extensively in mechanical engineering. But it is not covered in biology classes, medical classes with that rigor. Whereas in mechanical engineering, hardly we have case studies where how it is to be applied to human bones, strength of materials. Similarly, cardiology. What is cardiology? Control theory. Electrical engineers study in great details the maths and all those. But because of our reluctance to introduce maths in medical science, even the brightest of young doctors do not get the opportunity to study cardiology with that mindset. And there lies the problem. About 3-4 years back, I had visited Carnegie Mellon University. I still remember in our there electrical engineering faculty, there are quite a few practicing doctors. Yes, practicing doctors as faculty of electrical engineering, practicing doctors in the faculty of mechanical engineering. Can you think about that? So this entire approach, unification, we are supposed to solve the problem efficiently, intuitively, and move ahead with the advancements of technology. Think of a very simple problem. Generally, it's a very common problem for the managers. It's a financial manager. How does she generate some idea about the financial health of an organization? Study balance sheet. There are many financial statements, profit and loss and all those, cash, all those, financial ratios and all those. So what is this area of specialization? Could be accountancy, but it is mathematics as well. Today, as I already mentioned, for some young kid who want to develop her career, combination of biology and maths is one of the best combinations. Bioscience has to be a compulsory subject for any discipline in our first year undergrad program. Forget about science, engineering, and technology. What about social science? Can anybody studying in sociology today think of studying sociology without studying social networks? Now, social networks is, quote unquote, as we visualize, is a purely computer science. Under the computer science domain, we have to change that mindset. no subject, no topic is not patented by any discipline. No topic is patented. You have to tailor the subject, make it suitable, tailor the topic, make it suitable so that it becomes relevant and useful in the discipline you are working on. Today, natural language processing, a very common research area in computer science. But if you do not know the term language properly, how do you do it more intensively? Again, combination of humanities and computer science. So now we are very much in an era of convergence of social science, life science, computer science with technology as the driving force. Now, again, you remember the example I had given earlier. Till, say, yesterday, computer was supposed to be solving only the basic science or physical science problems. So what is a physical science problem? You uplift one, say, one satellite or some aeroplane for next couple of hours, next couple of weeks, to the exact time you know its trajectory, to the exact time. In medical science, you have a fever, you go to a doctor, doctor gives you a paracetamol and tells you that 5 दिन में आपका बुखार चला जाएगा. Can he tell how the temperature will fall? Just like in the previous case, you can tell how the aeroplane will move? No. And when he says that 5 दिन में चला जाएगा, can he say 5 days or 4 days, 12 hours? Can you think you are moving, going on a flight from Calcutta to Delhi, and mathematically you are saying it may take 2 hours, it may take 3 hours, it may take 4 hours. It may depend on person. Not possible. Those are based on empirical. Social science, I had given you this example, but for the context, I'm saying again, if in physical science, if X is greater than Y and Y is greater than Z, X is greater than Z. But in social science, if X loves Y and Y loves Z, can you say X loves Z? Nobody knows. It may be yes, it may be no, it may depend on the context. And all these you can try to solve only if you understand very clearly how to design an algorithm. How to design an algorithm to solve that problem. Just one sec. Just one sec. I'll give you one more example. এখন গন্ডগোল যাবে আসবে ক্লাস হয়ে গেছে অনেকটাই ওটা খারাপ ওটা না করে
মানে কি করবে এবার
আচ্ছা যাচ্ছে
না শেয়ারের ইয়ে কোথায় এই যে শেয়ার স্ক্রিনটা আছে শেয়ার স্ক্রিন স্ক্রিন পোস্ট অ্যাটেন্ডি জুম আছে নিজেরা না জানলে না পোস্ট অ্যাটেন্ডি জুম
Yes, ma'am. First option only.
We are trying to
Is
share
displaying.
one document.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is available. You can open the application that you want to show now.
অ্যাপ্লিকেশন
It is now browser
ইউ আর
open.
স্ক্রিন ইট ইজ নাও ইন স্ক্রিন শেয়ারিং মোড ওই যে এসে গেছে তাহলে নাও ইউ এটা মিনিমাইজ করো
Minimize it. Yes, ma'am.
তো তোমার ওইটা কোথায় আছে এইটা না না এটা তো না তোমার পিডিএফটা কোথায়
ওটা চলে গেছে তো ইয়ে করা
পিডিএফটা নিয়ে আসতে হবে PDF আচ্ছা স্বপন হচ্ছে slide 1 এবার আশা করি
Can you see the screen?
No, sir,
Hello?
you have to reshare it, sir. You have to reshare it.
Reshare it. How do I do it? Okay.
1 minute, sir. Sir, the
Okay.
screen share is now off. You just click bottom. There is a green button, share screen.
Share screen.
At the bottom,
Okay.
there is a you have to click on that.
We
You
have
have
clicked.
to click on first one. Click
Which
on
one?
the first option that is written screen. Just left side the whiteboard.
Share screen.
Are you able
No.
to see there?
Screen.
Yes, sir. Have you clicked? Yes, sir.
Screen. Okay.
Yes,
No.
sir. Now at the right bottom, you see there is a button.
Share. Yes. Share is there. I give share.
Yes, sir. Click it, sir. Yes, sir. Click it, sir.
Can you see it?
Yeah, it is showing. So PDF is now available. Yes, sir.
So you can see it, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please, sir. Continue.
Sorry for the problem. We are old people, you know, old people in new age. So, first of all, extremely sorry for the handwriting. I know my handwriting is not good, but it is not that bad, I can tell you. So I'm using some kind of, you know, this notepad. Prem Kumar and they all might be knowing. It's extremely difficult for us to draw such picture. So in the sequence of problems we have been discussing today, like this is another very basic problem told in computer science class. This is known as Tower of Hanoi problem. What is that? For those who may not be knowing this, suppose we have a tower and say we have couple of discs in such a way that the diameter of each disc decreases as we move up. It's very clear from the picture. I hope you're seeing that picture, right?
Yes, sir. The graph are available, sir.
Everybody is seeing, huh? Okay. So the problem is we have three such towers, A, B, and C. Initially, the discs are in tower A. We have to shift the tower, the entire set of discs to tower C with B as a temporary tower in between. We can use it, but at no point of time we can have a disc of larger parameter, larger diameter sitting on a disc of smaller diameter. Got it? We have to shift the set of discs from tower A to tower C with B as the intermediary tower in such a way that, and at every step I can move only one disc. I cannot move more than one disc. And at every step, it has to be done in such a way that a disc at a higher level cannot be larger than a disc in the lower level. I have worked out two examples of that. In the first case, we have only two discs. How can I do that? Just see, move disc 2 to B, A to B, then 1 A to C, and then B to C. It's done. Just check yourself. We can do it in 3 steps. With 3 towers, 3 discs, we can do it in 7 steps. 3 discs, we can do it in 7 steps. That means 2 to the power 3 minus 1. Mathematically, I'm sure computer science and IT students have done it already. Mathematically, it can be shown that with n discs, you can do it in 2 to the power n minus 1 steps, and you cannot do better. For n such disks, you will need 2 to the power n minus 1 disks, 2 to the power n minus 1 steps. You cannot do in smaller number of steps. Why I have taken this particular example? I have a reason. So far, we have given you some algorithms: prime number, binary search, linear search, bubble sort. Now, compare these two algorithms. Even though the problems are different, in bubble sort, we would require n square. That means n to the power 2 comparisons. Here, we need 2 to the power n steps. There it is. There it was n to the power 2, and here it is 2 to the power n. And this makes huge difference. How is it? Just see. There it was n square, and here it is 2 to the power n. If n gets doubled, in bubble sort, what would be the increase? N gets doubled means 2n square. That means it would be 4 times more. Here, n gets doubled, 2 to the power 2n. That means this also becomes 4 times more. Now, if n becomes 5 times, just think a bit. If n becomes 5 times, there it would be 5n square. N becomes 5 times. So that would be 25n square. There, that would take 25 times more. And here, 2 to the power 5n, that means 2 to the power 5 into 2 to the power n, that means 32 times more. And then, if n goes on increasing, in this case, in the case of Tower of Hanoi, this would be increasing at a very, very fast rate. Very, very fast rate. To such an extent that for sufficiently large n, number of steps would be so large that it would be infeasible for even the fastest computer to solve the problem in this feasible amount of time, in finite amount of time. When we talk about design and analysis of algorithms, this is one of the very, very important and talked after topic. We'll discuss later on. But for the time being, we have to appreciate these two different types of algorithms. In one case, of course, time increases with increasing in n. But in another case, time required increases in such a fast rate that after some n, it becomes infeasible to solve in finite amount of time. Okay, so that leads to another important aspect. For such cases, since it takes almost infinite amount of time, what do we do? So instead of approaching for optimal solution, would it be okay if we get some satisfiable solution? So what is the difference between the two? Suppose I want to buy a laptop. I know the specifications, and I know that the minimum price I should get at 60,000 rupees. But for that, I have to search all the shops in Calcutta. But I stay in, and that would be the optimal solution. But I stay in Newtown. I do not want to go beyond Newtown and Salt Lake. But within this area, I can't get the same laptop with the same specifications at less than, say, 65,000 rupees. Should I go ahead with that or not? Someone may say that that's fine. I don't have time to spend 5,000. I can spend more. On the other hand, some other person may say, no, I want to go for the minimum price. So at the end of the day, when you apply for social science applications, mostly, satisfiability is the key factor. It's not the optimality. Now, in your room, suppose you have a temperature controller. You say, okay, I want 25 degrees centigrade. Okay, would it be too bad if it's 26 or if it's 24? You can accommodate. Or if it's 22 and if it's 27, is it that bad? But think a medical case. We are talking of COVID nowadays. If oxygen saturation, you want it to be, say, 95. If it is 93, it's okay. Is it okay with you? So it depends on the perspective. It depends on the application. It depends on the individual, everything. So that leads to the concept of satisfiability. And again, I get down to my basic premise. We are into the era of AI and MI, machine intelligence, yes. So I am taking the decision now. Oxygen saturation 96 से कम है तो उसको ऑक्सीजन देना पड़ेगा. Now, if I have to train the machine to take that decision, then you need to know very clearly, rationally, logically, analytically, the reason behind the decision you would have to take individually, personally. Unless that, you cannot train the machine accordingly. And that's why the study of algorithms from proper perspective is so important. Just a moment. Hey, Sono, না এটাকে শর্ট করি, এটা মিনিমাইজ করে দাও এখান থেকে। হ্যাঁ এবার তোমার ইয়েতে চলে এসো মিটে, তাই তো? এই গুগলে এটা দেখো মিট দেখা যাচ্ছে। তারপর এবার স্টপ শেয়ার, শেয়ারিং শেষ তো? হ্যাঁ স্টপ শেয়ার করে দাও। হ্যাঁ ঠিক আছে, চল দরজাটা তাই বিস্কুটটা নিয়ে যাও, বিস্কুট লাগে। ওকে, সো I think we should stop here now. In the next class, that means next Thursday, 11 o'clock, we will start from where we are living today. And as you understand, gradually we are getting into the nucleus of algorithms, the heart of algorithms. But I hope, at least to some extent, we are now able to understand why we should study algorithms and what is the perspective of study. कैसे देखना पड़ेगा? For any singer, she has to learn classical music. Without that, she cannot proceed. But if she wants to make her career in Rabindra Sangeet, she will study classical music from one perspective. And if the singer wants to make a career in classical music, then she will study it from a different perspective. And today, irrespective of whether you are studying chemical, mechanical, electrical, IT, even computer science, at the end of the day, you are mostly working IT and all those in just clear problem solving. Very few of the present students are interested or they have the opportunity to make a career in theoretical computer science. For theoretical computer science, we have to get into absolute mathematical jugglery and complexity. So from both the perspectives, as a problem solving tool, this is how we will carry on. I think I should stop here now. And once again, sorry for the delay, initial delay, which is beyond my control. So,
No, sir, it is okay, sir, because a technical issue may arise. Yes.
So questions?
Yes, sir. For participants and for students, if you have any query or any questions, please you may post it down or you may ask directly by raising your hand. If you have any questions, any information you want to know from today's session, whatever sir has taught today, if you have any doubt, any information you want, you may please raise your hand. From participants, you are open to ask any question related to today's topic, so that it will be more smooth in the next coming days. If you have any doubt.
Yes. Okay, fair enough. They are feeling hungry, it seems.
So with your permission, sir, then we can end the session, sir.
Right.
And
so
we will have the session in next Thursday at same time.
And hopefully we'll start at 11. We'll be ready at 11. Okay.
Then we are ending the session, sir.
Yes. And next Thursday, 11 to 12.